Andrew Williamson here. Welcome back to Williamson Education. Well, now that we have looked at periods, commas, colons, and semicolons, we have covered most of the major punctuation marks in English. It's time now to move into some of the more nuanced territory. Today we will examine two marks that are used a bit less frequently. These are the so-called em dash and the parenthesis. The em dash looks like a small line about the width of the letter M as it is written on the page. Meanwhile, the parentheses look like little brackets that can open and close so-called parenthetical phrases. Let's dive in and look at how these two kinds of marks work in practice. The em dash comes first. An em dash is a flexible mark that can be used in a wide variety of circumstances for a wide variety of effects. In some circumstances, the em dash is used as a substitute for a colon when setting off a list of examples. For example, let's say you wanted to give a list of examples of racket sports that you like to play. Here's your sentence. There are many racket sports that I enjoy playing. Tennis, ping pong, and squash, for instance. See that? The em dash is used just like a colon, and you could choose to use either one of these marks depending on what kind of mood you're in at the moment of writing. Another use of the em dash closely related to the use of the colon involves explanations of previously mentioned ideas. I especially like to use the em dash along with the phrase, that is. Let me show you what I mean with an example. The Boston Red Sox baseball team went 86 years without winning a World Series and supposedly suffered from the curse. That is, a losing streak that started when they traded Babe Ruth to the Yankees. See how I've constructed this sentence? The main clause of the sentence includes a term, the curse, that requires further elaboration or explanation. A reasonably informed member of your audience is likely not to know what the curse is in this particular situation. Therefore, you must tell them by writing an informative elaboration using an em dash and the phrase, that is. The phrase, that is, serves to indicate a clarification of a previous idea that might prove ambiguous or difficult to understand for a reasonably well-informed audience. You will notice that my use of the em dash in this previous sentence came near the end of the sentence. In fact, it set off a phrase that concluded the sentence in question. At other times, though, em dashes can be used in the middles of sentences. In this case, they need to be used in pairs, one at the beginning and one at the end of the explanatory information. Let's have a look at how to use a pair of em dashes in this manner. The three piano players, all of whom had studied together in music school, continued to collaborate throughout their careers. In this sentence, the material that comes in between the em dashes serves to add extra information about the subject of the sentence, the three piano players. The sentence could function properly without that extra information, signaling that the em dashes are used properly to include non-essential material. Let's look at one final use of the em dash. The em dash can also be used to create a pause for effect in a piece of writing. The pause heightens drama and can create a sense of suspense. As a matter of course, using the em dash to create drama or suspense should occur at or near the end of a given sentence. Here's an example so that you can see what I mean. The coach was fixated on achieving one goal at all costs, winning. Here the em dash near the end of the sentence serves to set off information that clarifies the one goal. What is that one goal the audience of the sentence might like to know? That one goal is winning. The pause created by the em dash allows the author to heighten the sense of drama around the revelation that that is the coach's single goal. Generally speaking, em dashes should not be used too often. This is a relatively specialized mark. As with semicolons, I find that people who learn how to use em dashes tend to start using them quite frequently, but this should not be the case. Because this is a specialized mark, it should be used sparingly in small quantities. Furthermore, sentences involving em dashes are generally a bit more complicated than those without them. Just from the perspective of sentence complexity alone, we want to avoid too many sentence structures that have excessive complications. In order to use em dashes in appropriate amounts, I would recommend using them no more than once per typewritten page or very occasionally when communicating by email. The next mark we have to examine today is the parenthesis, a mark closely related to the em dash. In some cases, parentheses can be used interchangeably with em dashes, meaning that either one or the other mark could be used in a given circumstance. Parentheses look like these opening and closing brackets. They are generally used to introduce a so-called aside into a sentence, that is, a commentary that is not central to the main idea of the sentence and that introduces extra information. Parentheses can also be used for further explanation in order to give the reader a deeper sense of the topic at hand. We saw that em dashes could be used either just one at a time or in pairs. Parentheses are a bit different. If you use one parenthesis, a so-called opening parenthesis, then you must also use a second closing parenthesis. You may not use an opening parenthesis or a closing parenthesis on its own. Let's look at a few example sentences here to see how parentheses are supposed to work. As with so many of our lessons, you will notice that the rules around parentheses have primarily to do with writing. Asides and further explanations do occur in everyday speech, but we don't tend to know if these asides and further explanations are marked using parentheses. So parentheses are primarily a written phenomenon. Here's my first example sentence. The koala bear, a species native to Australia, is notable for its sweet appearance. See what I've done there? I've introduced extra explanatory information into the sentence using a parenthetical phrase. The phrase serves to alert my readers to the fact that koala bear may be a term that some audience members don't understand. Therefore, this term might require extra definition, such as I provided in my parenthetical. Note that I have kept my parenthetical phrase relatively short. I have done this on purpose in order to avoid cluttering the middle of the sentence with a long explanation that might distract the reader's attention from the proper flow of the grammar of the sentence. I generally like to keep my parentheticals relatively short. Let's look at another example of the punctuation mark. Here's my next example. The apartment, which I purchased in 2002, had gone up in value quite a lot over the previous 2 decades. Here, the parenthetical serves to establish a timeline of when certain events occurred. Specifically, the parenthetical establishes the length of time for which a given apartment has been held and helps to contextualize the gain in the price of the house. Without that information contained in the parenthetical, the sentence might still work from a grammatical perspective, but it would be missing some key conceptual information that helps the audience understand its significance. Parentheses and em-dashes are both specialized marks that should be used relatively rarely. As I have been suggesting, both of these punctuation marks can break up the flow of a sentence. That's the reason that I tend to keep phrases between parentheses and em-dashes relatively short. Sometimes you'll see writers use parentheses and em-dashes in a way that is not grammatically wrong, but that does interrupt the flow of their sentences and paragraphs. It is for these reasons that using parentheses and em-dashes should be kept to a minimum. When you do feel that it is appropriate to use one of these marks, you'll want to make sure that the phrase you insert using the parentheses or the em-dashes is kept relatively short. Doing so will help your sentences to flow much better overall. Well, that brings us about to the end of today's lesson on parentheses and em-dashes. I'll look forward to seeing you right back here for our next lesson on apostrophes and quotation marks. Oh, and don't forget, by the way, spread the word.